We are delighted to welcome you to the ID Plus project. Showcase and the launch of the ID Plus Microcredential. We are four of the students on the ID Plus project, and we are your hosts for today. My name is William O'Donovan.
Hello, my name is Claire McCarthy.
Hello, I am Brian Cullen.
Hi, my name is Brie Broderick, and I'm going to tell you about the plans for this morning. In just a few minutes, I will introduce Professor Stephen Byrne. We will hear from Dr. Nicola Maxwell and Professor Maureen about the ID Plus project. William and Brian will tell you about the certificate in disability inclusive practice. Claire and I will tell you about the certificate in social citizenship. There'll be time for questions and answers throughout the morning.
Before we begin, we would like to play a video that shows what the ID Plus project is all about. Before we do that, we would like to thank the Higher Education Authority for funding this project. The HEA has given €1 million funding for 3 years. Here are some of the ID Plus project students talking about the ID Plus project.
The ID Plus project is about
making it possible for people with intellectual disability to go to college
and to get a job after college.
ID means intellectual disability.
ID also means identity.
ID can be a student ID card too.
Plus means positive.
Plus also means more.
The ID letters in ID Plus are small
because disability is only a small part of who we are.
I am a piano player.
I am a fisherman.
I am a spinner.
I am a dancer.
I'm a singer.
I am an artist.
My identity is about more than my disability.
I have a right to go to college like everyone else.
I have a right to have a student ID card like everyone else.
I have a right to get a job like everyone else.
Thank you for watching this video.
I hope it helps you understand
That the ID Plus project takes a positive approach to intellectual disability.
Would like to welcome Professor Stephen Byrne, the Deputy President and Registrar of UCC and the ID Plus project sponsor. Professor Byrne will launch the ID Plus Microcred.
Thanks very much, Brian, for the welcome and for your fellow students here for welcoming me here to launch the showcase and the micro-credential today. I am utterly delighted to be here. I've been involved with the ID Plus project since the submission to the HEA, and I'm the UCC sponsor of this project from the management team. I'd also like to welcome our 60 plus delegates online from our sister institutions across the country and also from national organizations also here to share in the launch of the micro-credential and to be part of the showcasing of the ID Plus project. The Microcredential, it will enable those with intellectual disability to share their experiences and to have that access, that right to higher education that you identified in the video, which is absolutely open and should be a right open to all individuals here in Ireland and internationally. We're very proud of the two programs that have been developed this year and believe that they are leading the development nationally and internationally in the co-creation and the co-development and co-education of our novel educational pedagogies. And again, in this room, about 5-6 months ago, we had a review with the academic colleagues who participated across the university about that co-creation, that co-education. And it really was a learning and meaningful discussion about what worked, what didn't work, and how our novel pedagogies and our novel approaches in this initiative are there to future and enable all learners of all types to access higher education, but also those students who are undertaking nursing, law, music, to learn from, with and about people with intellectual disabilities, and for the people on the ID Plus project to also co-learn alongside individuals undertaking their degree programs as part of the initiatives. I would like to thank the HEA for having the vision and the foresight to invest in this project. We're here today as part of our dissemination pathways to share our knowledge with sister organizations, both nationally and internationally, so that we can learn and share our experiences with others and hopefully see the widening of participation across the country in higher education of all learners from all sectors of society. In particularly, I'd like to call out the 51 degree students who opted to become peer buddies and peer support learners, because without the support of the students, it might be a very daunting environment for our students on the ID Plus project to enter into that classroom. But I know from listening to those 51 peer buddies, they got much more out of this initiative than they put into it. They learned so much themselves from that co-education, that co-development, and that sharing of knowledge. So I know that they truly benefited from the experiences as well and will continue to participate in the program. The impact of the project extends beyond the university. It's a 12-week community-wide work placement is embedded in the program. And just for example, 2 of our graduates are participating in active citizen and active employed roles in both Bus Éireann and in Cork University Hospital as accessibility auditors. And I know that you're very capable, and I know Brian is working here in UCC as part of the UCC participation in this program. And again, are playing a very active role and contributing to the learned and working environment in our society. So I'm truly delighted to be here. I'm truly delighted to open this event and also to recognize the contribution from the HEA, but also from INHEF and other interinstitutional collaborations that we have developed and will develop in the future, because this is only the start of the ID Plus project. We are going to grow, we are going to disseminate, and we're going to see this flourish and foster in other institutions nationally. So congratulations to all, and congratulations to the team here who will lead us on the next part of today's event.
Thank you, Professor Bourne, and thank you for your ongoing support for the ID Plus project. Now I would like to welcome Dr. Nicola Maxwell. Nicola will give you some housekeeping info and then talk about the values of the ID Plus project.
Hi, William. Thank you very much, William. And good morning, everybody. So as William said, just a few housekeeping things before we get started. As some of you may have seen, there is an accessible bathroom here to my left in the room, which opens there. But there are more bathrooms on the floor just beneath us, including an accessible toilet. You can take the lift down there, or if you're trying to get your steps in, there's also the stairs, of course. It was mentioned earlier on, we're going to have question and answer sessions this morning. There will be one after Brian and William speak, another when we hear later on from Claire and Breed, and one after we hear from Maureen and before the closing marks by Professor Nuala Finnegan. There will be a break, we will need a break, and that break will be coming at around 12 o'clock for 15 minutes or so, and there will be tea and coffee in the room that many of you have already been in this morning. We also this morning, as Stephen mentioned, we have many people joining us online. For those people joining online, I believe also there's live captioning available. You need to enable that at the bottom of your screen. What we will also have during the morning, however, are video clips. You would see during Brian and William's session and later on in Moira's session. And just to be aware, those video clips done by the brilliant Inma, were recorded as we were going along. They were very much capturing things at a particular time and place. There might be the odd bit of background noise, so just bear with us is all we could say. Okay, so switching gear just to talk about our values base now. So the ID Plus project began in 2022, the result of a case study of a previous program, the Certificate in Contemporary Living, the CCL, which ran from 2009 until 2020. And the CCL, while it was always a shoestring operation, gave us plenty of time to think about how we should be doing things and how we should be developing things. Very much what we have seen from the feedback from the CCL is that it showed how important the college experience is, what it did for students' sense of belonging, students' self-esteem, sense of independence and becoming a person. And as you're going to hear from our 4 brilliant students during the morning, is students with ID want the same opportunities, the same experiences as their brothers, their sisters, their cousins, their neighbours, everybody else. And that means being included in everyday life, and college is a part of everyday life. So ID Plus has very much changed and continues to change how we are working. During the CCL, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities was gaining ground, and we have very much explicitly adopted the values of the CRPD in our work. We've embraced the principle of deliberative inclusion and co-learning practices and methods so that students with ID can learn alongside other students. Article 3, the principles of CRPD based on self-inclusion or self-determination, inclusion and participation are key to our work. So too is Article 24, which provides for inclusive education and recognises that people with disabilities have talents and opportunities, have talents like everybody else, and need those opportunities to develop those talents. And also that what's required for that to happen is at all education levels, including tertiary education, is both systemic change and cultural change. In other words, changing in how we deliver things in training and all of that. That is very much allied to Article 27, the right to work. And again, as you heard earlier on, we have changed even how we've done that under the guidance of the brilliant project manager, Mary Byrne, moving from unpaid to paid work placements. So as we've mentioned, Article 3 were the core principles underlining our work around self-determination, community inclusion. So how do we translate those rights into practice? Well, we begin by students' voices leading the way, listening to students, what they want, how we need to develop. Very much promoting inclusion and designing for inclusion in terms of content, methods, and all the rest of it. Giving students choices about what they want to learn and how they want to learn. And in terms of equity and accessibility, knowing that can only be achieved when there's recognition of the rights for supports for individual learning. And of course, we want to make UCC accessible physically, socially, and culturally. So we want to share power, we want deliberative inclusion, we're recognizing, valuing the lived perspectives and the lived experience of students with ID. And later on, after we hear from Brian and William, I'll talk more about how we're putting that thinking about values into practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola. I'd like to introduce again William O'Donovan and Brian Conn. William and Brian are graduates of the Certificate in Contemporary Living, or CCL. This course was run in UCC before the Social Citizenship, or CSC. Breed and I will tell you about the CSC later. William and Brian are students on the Certificate in Disability Inclusion Practice, or CDIP. They are going to tell you about the CDIP and some of the work they did on the course.
The CDIP is for people who have done the CCL or CSC. I decided I wanted to continue in college at the next level. I wanted it to get out there that people with intellectual disability, ID, can actually go to college and learn with everyone else. That we are like everyone else. That we have rights like everyone else. We are learning to speak up and show that what needs to be done changed so that people with ID are included everywhere. I tell you later about how I am doing that in Botharan.
This was the first year of the CDO course. There are four of us, with William, myself, Ellen, and Kaylee. We did a lot of work on this course. We did four modules, including finding and using your voice, reviewing and auditing skills, and set 3 frameworks for disability inclusion. And set 3 frameworks for disability inclusion. We joined the law module with Professor Mary Donnelly. We learned about the Assisted Decision-Making Capacity Act and the importance of decision-making. We went to social policy with Nicola Maxwell. We did presentations on housing and work. In the finding and using our voice module, we did 3 main things. We wrote a chapter for a book about rights for people with ID. We wrote a Rebels Manifesto with Imne Pavone. We wrote a script with Jodie O'Neill called Everything You Don't Know About ID. The goal of this module is to help ourselves to understand that we have voices to be heard and to set out the issues for ourselves. The book or chapter in it should be out soon. We wrote about the rights of people with ID to go to college. There's a lot of work to write it. We talked about what we wanted and we were the leaders in the discussion. We talked about what was on our minds about being UCC students. We talked about what we did, how we found our experience at the CCL, and what we think were the blockages to us being fully included and recognized as students. Our ideas and was in the chapters are ours. We met as a group 4 times to talk about the chapter. While we were talking, Nicola wrote down what we said. She wrote it so we could see it on the screen and we could see our words while we were talking. We recorded what we said so Nicola could listen back and get our words right when she was writing it up after our meetings. As we are talking there were some points that some of us wanted to make more strongly. Sometimes some of us had different experience. When people wanted to make particular points or we wanted to show our different experience, we put those words in italics to make the point stronger. Everyone got the chance to by email. Everyone got a chance to read it and check it. We mentioned lying on Teams or had phone calls to check. We were happy with it when it written up. We made this video called The Rebels Manifesto in Republic. The video is about human rights. Our friend Kenny came up with the Rebels Manifesto. Play Rebels Manifesto.
We are the UEC rebels.
Yes. People are free to make their own choices.
People are to be respected for who they are.
Action.
People should have equal opportunity.
We would like to make our own decisions in life.
We would like to be respected by the law like everybody else.
Action.
We like to have the proper support to make our own decisions in life. Action.
We should be free and safe like everyone else.
We don't want our homes or money to be taken away from us.
Action.
We'll sometimes need more time.
Action.
People with a disability should have a right to educational and health service support.
With Jodie O'Neill, who is teacher, artist, and resident UCC Cork Opera House. We wrote a script called I Don't Know About People with Additional Needs. It was based on Jodie's play about I Don't Know About Autism. We wrote the script with Jodie. We'll play part of it for you now.
The presentation.
What I don't know about people with additional needs. A new script by Alan, Brian, Kira, Kaylee, and William with support from Jodie, Claudia, and Kaylee's PAs. Scene 1, Intellectual Disability. Why we had to change the title of the script.
As we started this project with the title What I Don't Know About Intellectual Disabilities, was straight away we found that some people in the group don't like the term intellectual disability, so we changed the title.
I don't like the words because it's hard to say intellectual disability to someone who doesn't understand. Special needs can be easier for someone else to understand.
When you say intellectual disability, people think that you're bad, and then you get treated badly. I think they should scrap that name for good.
I don't like the word honest. It should be changed, especially it sounds better.
But I thought we had gone away from that old name. I thought special needs was an old name. I think that this means we are gone backwards.
I prefer the term people with additional needs.
Since the term special needs was made, we have learned a lot more about what people actually need.
Yes, additional needs means we're the same as everybody else. We just need a little extra help.
Wait.
Scene 5, Education. I went to 2 primary schools when I was younger. I liked one of my helpers and she is still my friend. Then I went to 2 secondary schools too. I had to move because the new principal wasn't nice. I had to get a taxi to school. Bandon is far away.
I went to primary school until about 1996. Then I went to school that was a skirt school. I went there because there was a special class. I only did up to 3rd year at school, and then I did my leaving cert. Because I was leaving cert because I was 18. I found it a bit boring at school. I did my junior cert in 10 minutes.
I went to school in Middleton. My man got on to me on Martin for extra support for junior and leaving cert. So I had to scribe in extra classes too. I made a lot of friends in secondary school.
I found it hard to make friends.
Like Alan, I found school was boring. I listened, but some subjects are hard to understand. If you don't understand something, you meant to put up your hand to ask the teachers, but most people don't. I had very good friends, even though at breaks they were doing their own thing. I was mostly on my own.
I was able to attend a mainstream national school and secondary school with support from an SNA. I loved school and I had lots of friends.
My secondary and primary school both mainstream, but I don't really think about them as separate.
There should be no units at all. Everyone should have the same rights to go to the same school. Some people will just need extra help, but people shouldn't be separated because then other people won't understand how to offer support to people with additional needs.
After school, I went to Crackton. I had lots of issues when I went there first. I didn't like the situation of the place, but I got used to it and got more freedom.
I was 20 when I finished school and I went to Coaction too. I was 21 then, now I'm 27.
When I left school in 2016, I came to UCC and completed a certificate in contemporary living. I graduated from that in 2018.
I hated school, but I love college. You don't have to be in class all day. Choose your own interest.
But we liked UCC so much and we made friends. Kaylee and I were in the same group. I like to go independently on the bus.
We learned about your rights here. I feel very proud to be back here.
It's a family tradition in my family to go to UCC. There's been an alternative here for many years. I'm carrying on the tradition.
I've graduated twice and that's very exciting. I'll be graduating a 3rd time. I want to be the same as my brothers and sisters. I want to be doing the same things.
Coming to college also gives me a sense of independence.
And it motivates me as well.
When President finding to Yvonne I'm going to tell you a bit about the audit module. The goal of this module is to help students understand what reviewing and auditing are, how audit should include people with ID, and to do audit so that people with ID are fully included in social The idea come from when we were in CCL and we did audit of UCC campus. We found things around the campus that needed to be changed to be more accessible in lots of ways. On the module, we talked about what an audit is. It's an inspection of how well things work for different people. We work with research about including people with IT in research. We went to the Granary Theatre and Museum office. We walked and wheeled and tested whether we can get into places or not, and if we could understand what is going on. As we went along, we took pictures and made videos of what we found. We presented our findings to Yvonne, head of UCC Theatre department, and Una from the development office. We will talk to Yvonne again when the plans for the granary are being developed. I'm doing my work placement in Botharan department in Cork City. I am getting paid for my work. I am putting the skills I have learned to good use in Botharan. I'm going to be talking to the bus drivers about people who use wheelchairs as bus users. I have lived experience of all the problems. I am going to Dublin to a new bus Erin building to check out how accessible that building is. I will be getting involved when the main bus station in Cork is being done up. I am working with the engineer who is planning the different bus stops around the country. I am giving him advice about what is needed for people who need to use ramps. Our friend Kaylee work placement is in Cork University. She is paid to tell them what the patient's journey is like. Someone who uses a wheelchair and is non-verbal. I'm heading you over to Professor McLean for the question and answers.
Thanks a million, Brian, and everybody for leading out that first session for us. And it's no mean achievement to have to sit up there and stand up there and do that kind of work. So we're really proud of you. So questions and answers. Anybody, any question, comment? If you can maybe tell us who you are and give us your question.
Morning, everybody. Aileen Kennedy is my name. I work in Munster Technological University. Delighted to be here. I just wanted to ask on that module, the reviewing and auditing skills module, was that, I'm very interested in it. Was that specifically focused on reviewing and auditing physical spaces, buildings?
Yes, it was. It's so to see if, say, myself and Kaylee could get into the building and how easy or what we need to make sure we could get into buildings. But it also could be for people who has a cane or with a dog who needs to know how to get in.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Aileen. And I suppose we also in that module look at signage and wayfinding. Brian or William is great at checking out the toilets for us and the size of chair that will work in any given space. So yeah.
Yeah, I was asking because one of the areas that we're looking at present in MTU is accessibility in terms of our policies and procedures and understanding of those. So I was just curious, was it focused particularly on physical spaces?
Yes.
Because obviously that's also important.
Yeah, physical spaces. And I think also we're very interested in the way that material and information is provided.
Excellent.
And looking at how that can be more accessible.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Aileen.
Deirdre Bonner from TU Dublin is saying, I'm very happy to hear that work placements are paid. How long are the placements for, and was it difficult to recruit companies who were willing to pay?
I wonder, would we ask Mary to answer that? Who has, Mary Byrne, our project manager, who has done Trojan work in getting us all sorts of work placements.
There was a few questions in there, I think, was there? How the placements are for 12 weeks. That was one of the questions I heard. And yeah, not so difficult, to be honest. This was my first time recruiting companies for work placements like this, and I have to say I was pleasantly surprised at the number of companies who, when I broached the subject of payment, an awful lot of them said, that goes without saying. We were going to pay them anyway, we assumed that. And then with others, it took a little bit of talking about, but to be honest, the point being made that the students are being paid for the work that they're going to do and that they will make a contribution to the organisation, that generally wasn't a hard sell. So I would say the answer was no to that. It was just a question of asking, I think.
Yeah. Thanks, Nicola. Anybody else here with a question or comment? No, we're okay. Anything? Oh, sorry. There's a mic on the way to you there.
Hi, so I'm Andy Ingemels. I teach at Cork School of Music, and I work on several courses there, also with the Inclusive Music Ensemble. I was really interested in the filmmaking aspects of that module, and I was interested, did you each take different roles? Was someone appointed as like the director, the camera person, and the editor, or did you all kind of work collaboratively and share those different roles?
I think we're all going to look at Inma here. Take a bow, Inma, who's our creative director, as the title will give her.
I know Andy, actually we work together. That's great. Yeah, we actually we took roles in directing, and they wrote all the manifesto themselves.
Sorry, can I just ask you to move up here so that people online can see you?
Oh yes, is it? Yes. So yeah, we took roles, so I passed the camera to them. They wrote all the script of the manifesto. I edited the film myself, yeah, but they did everything else, yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's just interesting to hear. I think I was hearing different voices saying action, so I was interested in like the sharing of the roles and the sharing of creativity and the collaboration process. But no, it was, I really enjoyed it though. It was class.
Yeah, they did all the stuff. I just did the editing.
Cool, thanks.
And I suppose for us, capturing the work that's going on has been really important, because we would hope to include some of that in our micro-credential, where we're trying to share the way that we're doing our inclusive work, and have that as a resource to share with people. So that's why we've been trying to capture it. Okay, anybody else? Down the back there.
Hello, my name is Edel Lynn. I'm from Toos Midlands, and delighted to be here today. I just noticed that Professor Stephen Byrne, Deputy President and Registrar, is down as sponsor. And I just was wondering about that word. What does that mean?
So thanks, Adele. So what that means is that within the university management team and within the university structure, Stephen is our sponsor. And I think sponsor for the reason that the role he takes is promoting the project at the senior institutional level. And that has been hugely important for the success of the project, because it's meant that we have an ally in all the key decision-making places within the university. And it means that Stephen has really played a role in raising the profile of the project and in encouraging, I suppose, our colleagues in different administrative offices to understand what's involved in the project and what we're trying to do with it. So it has been, from our point of view, really strategic and really enabling of the rolling out of the project within the university. So we're very grateful for the backing that we have from Stephen and from the university. Thanks, Adele.
Hi, I'm Catherine O'Mahony. I work here in UCC in Teaching and Learning. I really liked the manifesto, and I was just wondering where you'd like to see that go next.
Okay.
I love the UCC Rebels use.
The UCC Rebels. So any views on that, guys, about what you'd like to see happening with the manifesto? Who would you like to see looking at it, or?
Well, I would like if it went to different schools, but then, like, who we going to college, only people after school, and at least if it went round to schools, they can say, well, I never thought of college, but yeah, now I know we can go, so at least then they have a choice that they can go to college.
Yeah, brilliant. So encouraging other young people.
And it's also be interested for the teachers and the other students to know that, wow, our classmates can still be like us to college, or where if they don't like college, they can go out in the world.
Brilliant. Thanks, William. Any of the others want to say anything on that? Brilliant. And of course, Cork is the rebel county, so the rebel manifesto is no surprise that it's come from this group in UCC. Thanks, Catherine. Anybody else? Gentleman.
Thank you. And yeah, up the rebels. Gerard O'Carroll from MTU. I was interested in the co-learning aspect of it. And your previous speaker spoke of the benefit to all students. And I was just wondering, what strategy did you use to initiate that? Because I can see the benefits of it, but it's not apparent how you might, encourage and go about it and make it work, which apparently you have. So I was just wondering.
Okay, so I could maybe answer that, Jared. So
I suppose our starting point for finding colleagues who would be open to having students from the CSC and the CDIP in their classes was to, first of all, go to colleagues that we knew would have an interest in this area. And we developed what we call a role called Teaching Fellows. And we provided a very small stipend associated with that, which was 1,500 to provide some support. And we asked a number of colleagues, would you be willing to share your module, have students from our programs sitting in with your degree program students? And immediately we got a number of people who came forward and said they'd be willing to do that. And what we did was looked at what model of delivering co-learning would work. So our initial ask was for 4 weeks, that we would have 4 weeks where our students would sit in on the 12-week module. And that before those 4 weeks, we would have a period of time where we would have our students working with peer buddies who were taking the module. So degree students taking the module. And then at the end, we would have the peer buddies continuing to work with our students around the assignment piece. So that's how we've run it this year. One of the key pieces of learning, and some of our teaching fellows are here, is that the 4 weeks wasn't long enough, that we need to expand that. I might add, Therese, would you like to respond to that, putting somebody on the spot?
You know,
There's a gang of them along the back row, actually. They seem to be lined up together for our teaching fellows.
Is it on? Yeah. Yeah, no, so I think what the key learning that we took out of that was really one of the deliverables, I suppose one of the outcomes is really that it was sort of, we wanted to create a more inclusive model, I think, moving forward. And so the 4 weeks was kind of almost signaling out, here is a group of students that are separate from. And actually one of the things that we wanted to do was to actually push beyond that and push beyond this idea that students were guests or coming in. And I know we'll probably talk about this later after lunch or whatever, but so we're kind of hoping to move, I think, next year to having the students in with us for the entire semester. You know, right from the start, and we'll continue to have peer buddies, many of them who are here are fabulous ones, and that they'll work together for the entire semester. But I think also we did it in a way that, and again, we'll hear about this later, but in a way that was just, we tried it organically from, you know, from all the different modules to do it in a way that might work. We all have different expertise. We all come at this in different ways. And I suppose one of the biggest outcomes we will have from this project is that there are so many different ways to do this, actually. And there isn't a singular approach to inclusive education, and that it can happen in a range of different ways, you know. And I suppose I don't want to go too far ahead where we might go after lunch.
And we'll cover some of this again in the afternoon. No, but it's a great question. So that was our approach to do it. Was we identified first off people we thought would work with us, and then we put out a call and we got other people. So that's how we went about it. And we'll profile more of that work after the break.
One more question online from Irene. Irene asks, can the course be replicated in other ETB institutions? I am in South Kerry and there are not many options for school leavers with ID.
Okay, so we would love to see the course being replicated in many institutions at further and higher education level. I suppose the key challenge is funding. There needs to be funding for programs. And we're hoping that the micro-credential that we're going to run will be a way of giving people a bit of a blueprint for how we have done our program. I think each institution will need to look at what resources and strengths they have that might mean that they would tweak it a little bit or do things slightly differently to play to their own strengths. But I do think there is potential to do this, and the ideal would be that we would have a program in every further education college and in every higher education college, and that we would have progression routes for people to move between programs. Some programs might be focused on music, on drama, on, you know, social sciences, whatever, depending on what the skills are of a particular college. So I think there really is a lot of potential to develop a variety of programs so that people have choice and that they have the ability to move around and do more than one program. So that would be the ideal. So yes, I hope that will happen. With Path 4 funding, I think that will ease things up for the higher education sector. I'm not really sure for the further
education sector yet on what funding might look like there. Is there anybody from that sector here that wants to say anything around that? Anybody else? No, okay. Great. Okay, so I think we'll, oh, there's one more, Owen. Can we just take one more question there? Thanks, Ruby.
Thanks. My name is Owen Nash, and I suppose today I'm representing Cope Foundation. I'm a researcher here as well. I have a couple of questions, and can I get them all in or not? Is there time? But
well, shoot with one anyway. We'll see where that goes.
The first thing that comes to mind is where resources are tight and funding is required. Is there a vision for further education, higher education, to be able to cooperate across institutions so that people can learn in multiple environments and still be able to kind of come out with qualifications and have their learning requirements met? Is there a space for that to be happening and worked? The second question then I have is for Brian. Brian, I know I could hear your voice regularly shouting action in the video, and it follows up from Andy's one. And I was wondering what it was like for you to be a director in a movie. What was that experience like for you? And for William, I know, William, you're a really good dancer and involved in lots of theatres, and you were involved in assessing the accessibility of an arts institution or an arts organisation. Is there space for you to do that across multiple arts agencies within the city, and a professional role for you in the future, do you think? So sorry for three questions.
Okay, we'll take them one by one. So Brian, how did you find being involved in making the film?
The film was great and felt very good being seeing action.
Okay, so you enjoyed it. Brilliant. William, do we have a mic? Pass that over to William. So William, the question for you was, do you think you could replicate or do again the work you did in the granary, looking at accessibility in the granary?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I could. Like, even this wasn't about this, but myself, I'm doing drama in Crown. The teacher and myself were thinking of going to the opera house, and she would throw my wheelchair up, and I would try and climb upstairs, the steps into the stage, and let the audience say, how come there's no way for them to get up without trying to climb up steps? So I don't know when, but we're planning on doing that so that we won't be giving out by the apparatus, but the audience will.
Very clever. Yeah.
So to answer your question, yes, there is a load of opportunities just to go out there and look.
Brilliant. Thanks, William. Okay, Owen, I won't get to your first part of your question because we're going to move on. So thanks to everybody for engaging with us. And I'm going to hand you over now to my colleague, Dr. Nicola Maxwell, who's going to tell you a little bit more about our model that we're using on the program.
Great, thank you. And Jared, thank you for the question. It allows me to edit down this little bit and we get to the break a little bit quicker. Okay. So Maura mentioned, so, you know, the nuts and bolts, the mechanics, how do we do it and how do we get this going? So as Maura said, people are crucial to this, and how we support people and listen to people, because as Therese said, we started with a model, but you know, nothing stands still, nothing is static. We need to develop and we need to move on. And what that's meant for students' choices. And we're going to hear from Breed and Claire later on after the break all about that as well. So there were three of us in the core project, Moira, Mary and myself. But we have two practice educators as well, Jerry and Clodagh, who are up here, who cut their teeth on the CCL. They lead out on a program each, either the CSC or the CDIP. We have 4 learning support staff who are crucial to both the cohort-based modules, because we still have some cohort-based modules, but are also a crucial link
between the students and the ID Plus fellows, our teaching fellows, and the peer buddies. We have lots of time built into our timetable over the week. There's a lot of fluidity, a lot of moving around in order to create spaces for learning and for the engagement between all of these different people. So as Moira said, we realized well, there was 3 of us were not going to be delivering this, not even 5 of us were going to be delivering this. This was going to take a university community to deliver this. And so what we wanted to develop and what we have started developing is a community of practitioners and a community of practice. So people who are mainstreaming effectively, no special units, as you heard in the video earlier on, mainstreaming, making it normal that students with ID are included in modules. So the ID Plus teaching fellows were a critical part of that recruitment strategy, all about, you know, opening up the spaces and all the rest of it. And as Maura said, we started off with people who we believed to be very like-minded, and that more expanded. But critically, we spoke to people in all 4 colleges in the university. So in arts and social sciences, in medicine and health, in science and engineering, and in business and law. We didn't want this to be a niche thing that sat, you know, in nursing or education or social science. It had to be a cross-university initiative. And as Stephen mentioned earlier on, other students were crucial to this. We wouldn't be a university without students. They're the lifeblood of what we do. And we learned particularly from our Icelandic partners in the Erasmus Join In project, how crucial peer buddies are to people just, you know, having the crack, having coffee, getting on in college and all the rest of it. When we asked for peer buddies, I genuinely thought we'd get 10 students, and 57 students signed up, which was a phenomenal number. And those students were really, really critical. They signed up from across the 14 modules. The call went out via the lecturer on the modules, and students came forward. Now, the other part of that, of course, we couldn't ask people to sign up without providing support along the way. What were we asking them to sign up to, and how were we going to support them to do that? Same as with the ID Plus fellows. So we had regular support meetings or regular roundtable sessions with both the ID Plus fellows and with the peer buddies who signed up. So we created these spaces. At least we're going to find out if we created these spaces when we start evaluating it, for people to be able to discuss what was happening, the skills they needed to develop in order to do this work, what methods they were developing to do this work, how the content, how the delivery might be changing, and to discuss the inevitable challenges that arose as this work happens, because there were always challenges when work arises, but also the opportunities, because as Therese said, now we had our 4x4x4, breaking this 12-week semester into 3 4-week segments. And now we're thinking, no, it needs to even be more inclusive. And we have learned that from the off. So what also happened were changes in assessment. These modules for CSE students and for CDIP students, particularly the CSE students, all the modules were grouped under our own module code. So it allowed us to be very flexible, but again, that may have to change a little bit as we move forward as well. But also what we, and those 4 learning strands were in creative and expressive arts, accessibility and inclusive spaces, health and well-being and sustainability and global citizenship. So as you can see here, there were various subject areas under that. Unfortunately, CDIP students got no choice. They just had to do the enabling and learning strand in that. And because our assessment across the board is based on portfolio-based learning in very, you know, applied or experiential type modules, the ID Plus teaching fellows also modified, were able to design an assessment that mirrored the assessment for their module. So we had lots of different assessment formats, various modalities such as podcasts, PowerPoints,
all sorts of videos, conducting a choir in one case and working in a group to make a wind turbine in terms of the engineering module. And we're going to hear an awful lot more about a lot of that much later on, because now it's probably time, it's fair to say that it's for coffee, and we will answer any questions again at the end. So thank you again. We are coming back at 20 past to begin again. So please help yourself to coffee and refreshments, and thank you, and we will see you in 20 minutes.
I would like to welcome Bree Broderick and Claire McCarthy. Reed and Claire started in UCC last September on the Certificate in Social Citizenship, or CSC. They will tell you about coming to college and especially their experience of co-learning modules.
Coming to college was a new experience. I applied to UCC because I was encouraged to apply, because I wasn't doing anything. They said it would be good for me and I would meet new people. The fees put me off, but I talked to Mary Byrne and she encouraged me to apply. I went to the open day, applied, and went for the interview. I was glad I applied and I have enjoyed the course. It was a good idea. I'm doing my paid work experience now in EPS in Mallow. We started with 4 workshops last May to get ready for college. It was a chance to feel comfortable, find out where to get coffee and tea, to be independent, to go out there on campus and to get to know people.
The first day we came in, we were introduced to the practice educators, Jerry and Clodagh, and the learning support staff, Grania, Sinead, Hara, and Marion. Then we had to make choices. We met lecturers from all different learning strands, and some students who came talking about the modules. The lecturers presented what their modules were about. All the modules are very interesting, but we could only choose one learning strand. The minute I saw sport, I knew what I wanted. The strand I picked was health and well-being. The modules I did were sport in the Mardyke, nursing, studies in Brookfield, and psychology on main campus. All the modules were very interesting and gave us a taste of mainstream college. It meant we were included in mainstream modules, and just because we have a disability doesn't mean we are any different. It is good for our self-esteem to be included. We were assigned buddies. They met us before the classes and brought us. If we needed any help, they helped us. It made it easier because we knew faces instead of meeting a group of strangers. Before the modules started, we met up with the lecturers and they explained what the modules would be about, so it was easier for us to understand. The lecturers and students worked together as a group to make sure we were included. Group work and project work works well together because we got to talk to people in small groups and you do activities together that you are included in. In smaller groups, you get to your say and have your voice heard. Co-learning is important because it gives people an opportunity to do something with different groups of people who are interested in the same things as you. It gives you a taste of things you might do in the future. For assessments, we did in-class assignments and presentation group work and research projects. We had help from, if we needed it, from the staff and buddies. We got to choose topics that we were interested in. For example, in nursing and in research, we weren't talking about things we had no. It is important for different types of people to learn together. It brings up your confidence. Just because you have a disability doesn't mean you can't learn with other people. They also learned from the ID Plus students that people with ID might just do things in a different way, but they can and want to learn. You have to go about going to college in a different way, but that shouldn't stop someone with ID from going. Colleges need to make coming to college more appealing and more accessible for people with disabilities in general and people with ID. I'll hand you over to Professor Maureen for questions and answers.
Reid and Claire for that description of the certificate in social citizenship and your part in it. So anybody here with a question or a comment? Nobody? Yeah.
Hi, Hugh McCarthy, MTU. Bree just mentioned something really important there, that the fees put her off. I'm wondering, did you pay the fees?
Mary Byrne sorted that one, I think.
I applied for a grant.
Excellent. I suppose it's probably for Maura actually as well, that people with disabilities have lots of challenges coming in, and financial challenges are there as well. Is there funding for the students coming in? Are fees waived, or is there a mechanism by which fees might be waived?
Yeah, that's a hugely important question, the whole issue of fees and how these types of programs are funded. So because we have been supported by the Higher Education Authority, we've been able to create some bursaries to support students with their fees on the two programs at the minute. But as a model going forward, if we are serious about inclusive education, it needs to be funded. So students on these programs need to be able to apply for SUSI grant, and they need access to the fund for students with disabilities. They need to be able to take the programs in a flexible way, maybe part-time rather than full-time. So the issue of funding is really crucial, and we can do all the inclusive practice we want. Unless we actually have funding that's accessible to students, we're not going to be able to roll this out in any meaningful way. So I think it is hugely important.
Thank you. Thanks, Breed.
So we have a question, and it came in earlier. We just had to park it, from Michael Gill from ATU, and Deirdre Falvey in UCC would like this question answered also. So Michael said graduation was mentioned as being great. What award does the student graduate with?
Okay. So the students are graduating with level 5 awards on both programs. 5 and 6, yeah. So the way we've looked at the whole issue around awards, it's been an ongoing issue for us since we began our first program 12 years ago. So as a university, for the most part, the awards given out at UCC are level 6 and above. As students, we've mapped what students are doing onto a level 5 award. So the way that we've worked with that is that our programs are run through adult and continuing education framework, and our students get an NUI certificate, special purpose, that's mapped on to level 5 on FETAC. The reason we haven't gone down the FETAC route, and we've really thought about this on numerous occasions, is that we feel we have more flexibility in terms of the creation of the curriculum by having it within the university structure and within the ability to draw on the strengths that we have. We feel that trying to map it directly onto something that's a little bit more prescriptive in how we can go about delivering and assessing is problematic for us. So that's why we have stayed outside the mapping on to, you know, applying for FETAC certification. So we're kind of doing a bit of the rebel manifesto piece ourselves, I think, in terms of how we've gone about maneuvering that. That's a question there.
Thanks very much. Great to hear those examples. I was just wondering if you were giving advice to teachers, the people that are designing the learning, the co-learning, what small changes made it more accessible for you, more inclusive of all learners? So you mentioned maybe more time, but is there anything else that people who might want to do this in the future might think about?
So maybe if they told people that we were coming into the class and that we might need a little bit more help than others, or maybe we showed them how we learn so they can improve on doing it then. And I suppose everyone has a different way of learning, but we all just need to maybe learn differently sometimes.
Great. Any of the others, anything that would have made it easier for you?
Well, I thought, like, if when they, like Claire was saying about, we all learn different. If they see the way we learned and we already see how they learned, so we can help each other. So it's not just teachers or the lecturers, it's the other students. We can help them and they can help us. And well, isn't that what we want anyway? To be like everyone else, or if they help us and we help them, that's be lovely harmony.
I thought you were going to break into song there. William. Okay, anybody else or anything online? No. Okay. Yes, Owen, can you remind me what the first part of your question was? Can you remember? I've forgotten, maybe somebody else.
I'm just working on my short-term recall here. It was about, I suppose, some of the issues that were raised were about the maybe capacity and what's in communities, and we were talking about geographically, some areas are separated, and is there a space for institutions to work across, like with each other? So there's loads of pockets of brilliant work, I think, always happening. And the challenge is within the network, if they're connected, is there better opportunities for learners when there's cooperation and a positive network for offering that spectrum of opportunity to people coming into education? Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's a great question, Owen. Or yeah, it really is something we're very conscious of, that every institution has its own skills, and maybe the people in one institution are you know, who are really pushing forward the inclusive agenda, or maybe in music or drama. In another institution, they might be in nursing or a different part of it. So I think there needs to be that flexibility about how we can model and shape the content of our programs, which is maybe another reason not to have them all identikit, you know, being rolled out everywhere. I think the issue of how we can network between different institutions in a geographical area is a really interesting one. One way, obviously, is that we would have kind of progression routes or circular routes where people can, you know, do maybe a course in further education, then move into higher education, maybe back into another further education program. Another model might be that you know, one institution will deliver part of the credits and another institution will deliver another part of the credits, depending on the skills that they have or the expertise that they have. So I think we really do need to think as creatively as we can about it. In any given area, there is, you know, if you think of Cork City, there's only 2 further or higher education institutes, UCC and MTU. So the amount of places that can be provided for students is probably about, you know, 30 places, maybe 15 from each institution. So if we're going to expand that and really meet the demand that I think will be there, and if like William says, we go out to students in second level and we tell them about opportunities, the demand is likely to increase. We have more students going through mainstream now. They'll want to stay in a mainstream setting. So I think we really do need to look at how do we bring further ed colleges into it, and how do we share between the different institutions to try and create opportunities. So we also have and Des is here, who's the chair of INHEF, which is the Inclusive National Higher Education Forum. And that basically, and I've seen Deirdre and other people as well, Martine, I think here. So that's people in different further education colleges around, higher education colleges rather, around the country who are interested in providing these types of programs. And we network together as a way of kind of sharing ideas, sharing resources, and really trying to shape the policy agenda around this. And I think if there were something similar happening at further education level, that would really be wonderful to try and move it all on.
And I just acknowledge 2 comments, which is very much reinforcing what you've just said from Margaret Finch. I'm not sure where Margaret is from, but Margaret is saying collaboration with ETBs and private providers with HE for progression pathways. And just as you've been saying, and we've been talking about this a long time, challenging the notion of linear progression, because such a collaboration would enhance choice and access, which may indeed be parallel routes, etc., based on individuals' choices. And Margaret has just told me she's from MTU. Thank you, Margaret.
Great. Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay. Yeah. We're good to go. Okay. That's okay. That's fine. That's fine, Claire. So I'm just going to move on now to another, oh, I can't believe it's raining, is it, behind me? I don't know what's happening. I'm just going to move on to look at some of the issues that people raise in the morning. How do we actually do this work? What does it look like in the classroom? What role do our teaching fellows have, and what role do our peer buddies play? So I'm going to play you some videos from each of them as we've been going along. We've been trying to, sorry, now I'll go one by one. We've been trying to capture the work that we've been doing, and we've been trying to package it together in a way that will allow us to share it with people on a national level. So that's the reason we're developing the Microcredential. And what we will try to do is have that ready by the end of the summer to roll out to people. So the first thing we're doing is we have hired a postdoc researcher who's working on a literature review. And she's looking at trying to capture international best practice around inclusive education, what it looks like, how it has been modeled, how it has been delivered, what the experiences of the different parties have been. So we're hoping to bring that on stream in some reports very soon. We've been then capturing our own practice by doing a series of interviews with our teaching fellows, and they will be going on throughout the summer. We're including surveys and interviews with our peer buddies, the other core piece of our model that we have developed here at UCC. And of course, we're going to continue to engage with degree students who are on the modules that our students have gone into, because we think it's quite interesting how students on the degree programs experienced our students being in with them and what that felt like for them and how they feel about it. And then we will, of course, consult with our own ID Plus students. So they're the various ways that we're capturing the learning from the project. So what we're going to do now is have a look at some of the things that we have learned from our ID Project Fellows. So they're going to be little snippets of videos where they talk about and reflect on what has happened in their classrooms, what they have done in their teaching to try and make it more inclusive. And I just want to apologize to the people in the back row who may be seeing themselves on screen. That's a bit painful, but it has to be done. So we're starting with Trace Kenna, who taught the module Sustainable Cities and Communities.
So I teach a module called Sustainable Cities and Communities, and as part of that module, we do an assessment item, and it's a research project, or the students all do a research project, and the output of that research project is that they create a podcast episode. And so we decided that we would use this for a number of different reasons in the module, but that we would get the students to become, active in the construction of their knowledge, but that partly they would think about creating more accessible and inclusive content, and that they would learn to communicate in accessible and inclusive ways, scientific or geographic knowledge. So we used this as a tool for learning, and we thought this would be a really good tool then to use as part of the ID Plus project. And so what we did is we got a group of students together, buddies, that worked on the research project together, and they worked to create a podcast episode together as part of the project. So we did a couple of different things as part of this module. We created a series of meetings first, I think, where the students basically got to know each other, and they learned a bit about each other. They learned about the strengths, each other's strengths. They learned about some of their life histories, maybe places they visited, cities in the world that they're interested in, topics that they'd like to learn more about, all of these kinds of things. They basically got to know each other. And as part of that, then they co-created, if you like, the assessment and co-created their research project and found things that they had common interest in. And they built their project from there. So they sat, as I say, they sort of sat around in a series of meetings, got to know each other, and from there they built up their research project, figured out everyone's skills and their strengths, and from there they built the kind of content of the research project on a couple of different themes that we've been covering in the module, and on the themes that the students had all attended the lectures together, they'd all attended lectures together, and they built up their kind of knowledge on those areas, and went off and conducted their research together. And what they did then, as part of the assessment, is about distilling down. The nature of the assessment anyway for all of the students is about distilling down, big ideas, big concepts into more accessible content. So they created a question and answer format for the podcast. And so each of the students took responsibility for a couple of questions and a couple of answers as part of that. And so the students from the CSC also had their own questions and their own answers to produce as part of the podcast episode. They could go and research some of the information for those sections, and then they could practice their kind of their different sections, and then they make their different contributions. So they worked collaboratively in a range of different ways, basically, to create this research project, to build their knowledge on a couple of different things around kind of sustainable and inclusive cities, and then to produce their podcast episode.
So that was Trace. So some of the key things I think that we see in that is what Trace calls out at the start about the social aspect of learning, the need for students to spend time getting to know each other, and the importance of understanding, the interests of the different people who are joining the class. So I think that piece around taking time is hugely important. The importance of group work, having group work built into the module is really, really important. And I think it was Claire spoke about that earlier. That when you're learning, you want to be in that space where you feel your voice is being heard, and where there's that opportunity to share in the learning. And Therese also called out there the accommodating of interests and strengths in the choice of assessment topic. So that when you're thinking about what the assessment might look like, how can you play to a variety of learning styles, a variety of ways of demonstrating learning and providing information or conveying information. So really thinking about that, I think, is important. Okay, the second one, I don't think Eva's here, is she? No. Okay, that's probably better for her not to have to watch this. So Eva McMullen delivered choral studies, which is one of the music modules, and had some of our students involved.
In the module choral studies MU 3034, as part of the co-learning, I was very keen to retain the core information, the core material that I would teach normally within that module. However, it was very clear that I would adapt it, change the way that I would present it to make it accessible to both cohorts, which actually was hugely beneficial for everybody because it made me think about how I teach the module, how one assumes that the language that I use, because I'm familiar with the material, is accessible to all people. However, once I changed the language, I realised, as did the students, that it was a more effective way of teaching. And part of the way that I adapted the language and how I presented was including more discussion, more practical skills within the class, which worked very well. What worked really well was when I integrated practical, hands-on skills and learning within the module. So, for example, the students together learned how to conduct a choir and keeping beat, and got to stand in front of the University College Cork choir, which was hugely beneficial not only for the students but also for the choir, because they got to see different conducting styles. Also, we learned some law of signs, which is an augmented form of communication, which we use with people that have communication disorders. Again, all students benefited hugely and remarked on how much they enjoyed learning the signs. Through the process of the programme, I think one thing that really stood out dramatically actually for me was that students have so much ability, and I think sometimes we tend to focus on what people can't do. However, my experience was totally the opposite. I just saw so much ability, and I think I'd love the opportunity to have longer time with the students, because I think what was achieved within the 4 weeks was actually phenomenal.
Okay, so that's Eva's experiences, and I think some of the things that we're learning from that is the value of easy read, plain language, using a lot of visuals in lecture material, the basic principles of UDL that we're all increasingly familiar with, and how that can make learning easier for everybody, not just the ID Plus students, but for all students in the lecture room. Again, the importance of group activities that have a practical focus. So for Eva, it was helping students to develop the skills around directing a choir. We'll see in some of the other videos, it was other practical experiences. So I think if you're looking at a program or looking at a module that might work as a co-inclusion, we had a sports module. Anything that has a practical activity that allows people to work together in a practical way, I think is a real helpful element. Right, so the last of the videos from our teaching fellows is Paul Leahy, who is in engineering, and his module was Introduction to Energy Engineering.
So this module was very well suited to co-learning because it is a module that's focused on the practical element, the doing, kind of discovering the properties of materials and exploring the concepts of sustainability. And for all our students, we support that in the lab environment by demonstrators who are there to advise, provide some little hints, and the students discover the knowledge. So the students of the ID Plus program are embedded in groups. This is a group work module, so they're embedded in groups and they work alongside their peers, and they all learn together, working towards a common goal of designing a mini wind turbine. So what worked well in this module, I think the fact that it was a group work module lent itself to having diverse cohorts of students. And I think it also, what worked well for me was that in thinking about how to prepare for having students from the ID Plus program, it made me think a little bit about how I present the information and also how I assess the module. And I actually changed the assessment this year to the benefit of everybody involved. So I didn't make any differentiation in anything for students on the ID Plus program, but I did change the overall approach to the module. Not a lot, but made some changes that I think improved the experience for everybody. We don't there are things then that we're not concerned about at the outset, and then they become apparent that maybe they are things that we could improve. And certainly one thing that I learned from this was due to the way we structure our e-learning platform, Canvas, it wasn't possible for the ID Plus students to be registered as users on Canvas, and everybody else on the module was using Canvas. And I do think it introduced, it basically meant that they were being treated differently and they had a slightly different experience, and I think it probably reduced the experience to some extent. Now, I took steps to address it, but I think it would have been better for everybody to have the same access to e-learning platform with appropriate supports where necessary.
I suppose some of the things there are, again, the piece around assessment that supports multiple ways of demonstrating learning. So whether it's video, a podcast, presentation, poster, just not just the written format. And the whole piece that Paul calls out there about avoiding maybe the othering of the students from the ID Plus project by making sure that we're aligning everything around program design with the standard institutional system. So Paul spoke about Canvas, and we had the issue that our students were, yes, registered on Canvas, but under the module, our co-learning module code, and they weren't registered under his code. So that was a learning for us that we can address the next time round, but we hadn't thought about it. But as far as possible, just making sure that we're tied in with all of the institutional systems. And advocating, I suppose, for these systems to be as inclusive as possible. So whether that's around the way we set up our modules on Canvas, trying to make sure that Canvas is as accessible as possible. And we've been working with our colleague James Northridge, who's working on Inclusive UCC, rolling out the principles of UDL across Canvas and across modules. And some of our modules this year will be part of the work that James is doing for where he's looking, he has a team of interns who are looking at modules and looking at how they can apply principles of UDL to those modules so that everything is more consistent for students. So I just want to move on now to look at what we learned from our peer buddies. And we have two peer buddies in the room. They're the people sitting at the back there, Dara and Ruby. You'll be glad to know you're not on the videos, but some of your other buddies are. So I'm going to start with Mary Mohali, and Mary was on the module that Trades teaches on sustainable cities and communities.
My name is Mary, and I took part in the ID Plus project this year. We had two participants come into us from the ID Plus project in our geography module, which was on sustainable cities. So the best thing I thought about taking part in the project was actually getting to know the two people from the ID Plus project. So as I said, two of them came in and they had very different personalities and quite different people, but it was kind of fun getting to know each other and finding what we had in common and building up a bit of a camaraderie between each other. And also something which I found really enjoyable, which I hadn't kind of thought about before, was actually getting to know your other classmates better, because obviously for us, our first year was all online. So it was kind of nice to kind of get to know people properly, and it was nice to kind of build up relationships because obviously you're working together, so you get to know each other a bit better. What I did there, obviously, it did to bring challenges, and the thing I did find hardest was because 7 of us were working on a project together, people had a lot of different ideas, and at times I found it kind of hard to narrow and kind of find a way to go. But I think I wouldn't rather there have been less people. I am glad there was 7, but obviously 7 people does bring its own challenges when you have different ideas. If something that surprised me the most about taking part in the project was definitely how much I enjoyed it. Like signing up for it, you know, you're not quite sure what you're signing up for when you sign up for something, but it definitely surprised me looking back on it how much I did enjoy taking part in the project. If someone wanted some advice about if they were considering signing up for it, I would say definitely go for it. There's nothing to lose. And I feel like as well, something that I kind of would appreciate knowing before I start would be like the time you have to put in, but you don't have to put that much time in terms of it's not a very time consuming, but the time you do put in, you find it very worthwhile. Because obviously at the end of the day, people are very worried about transcripts and everyone's so busy in college anyway, but doesn't take a lot of time, but the time you do put in is definitely worthwhile. So I definitely would recommend somebody go for it because it is a very enjoyable project.
That's Mary's advice. I suppose what we found from any of the conversations we've had with the peer buddies is that they did find it enjoyable. And a lot of them spoke about the joy and enthusiasm that the ID Plus students brought to the class. And I think that piece about the buddies getting to know their other classmates better is really interesting. And it came up in a couple of accounts that they were enablers really of better class cohesion amongst the wider group. So the next one we have is Hannah Morrissey, and Hannah was on the module Introduction to Development Studies, and Mike, the lecturer, is down there. So we'll see what Hannah has to say.
So the name of the module was Introduction to Development Studies. So to make it kind of more of a co-learning module, I know there was 3 peer buddies and myself in the class for my module. And prior to each lecture, we kind of met with our lecturer to discuss material and content, just to make sure we knew how the class would run. And we also broke the class into smaller groups for discussion purposes of each different topic, just to make sure everyone was engaged, knew what was going on, and the PowerPoints were less text heavy and more visual. And so that really, all of those things really just made it more of a inclusive and co-learning module. So I'd say my role as a peer buddy is kind of encapsulated in the name, like you're a peer buddy. So for example, on the first day of lectures with 2 students, we met them before the lecture even started just to see how they were feeling, you know, asked how they wanted to be introduced to the class, if they wanted to, and what they were most comfortable with. And if we were having smaller group discussions within class, you know, we'd ensure that one of us is with them in that group, or at least one of us, just for, you know, see if they're engaged, if they're feeling included, and are they enjoying the actual class, which is the most important thing. And then another major part of the role was helping them complete their assignments and just helping them, you know, make sure they're taking the most out of the assignment and keeping to the relevant points. I'd say one of the best things about being a peer buddy was just the actual classroom scenario of seeing the 2 students and then the rest of the class just like really just integrate and, you know, converse with each other, get different perspectives, and it was just really, really like lovely to see, and you know how inclusive everyone could be to each other, and yeah. So it was great to see the enthusiasm of the 2 students, like for the topics that we were discussing. Sometimes, every so often, this enthusiasm maybe strayed a bit off track into like different topics and everything. So I'd say our main challenge, my class peer buddies, would have been maintaining focus and keeping on track, especially for the assignment.
Okay, so I think Hannah calls out some interesting things. First of all, the you know, accessible material, the way the lecture notes were provided with very little text and more image. And the challenge of keeping students focused, and I think that's a really interesting one, and it's something that we will build in more probably to our training of peer buddies the next time round. So the peer buddies receive training before they started the role, and we'll be refining that, I suppose, based on their feedback. And the final one is Mary Duggan, and Mary was doing the master's in law, and the students attended the mental capacity law module.
My name is Mary, and I'm currently studying a Master's of Law in International Human Rights Law and Public Policy here in UCC. Yeah, it was a great experience, and I think we learned a lot from each other, and We got to know them quite well because we started meeting up with them at the start of the semester when they came to UCC, and then they, the students came to our lectures most weeks, and then we, when they had assignments, we used to help them with their assignments. Yeah, the name of the module they sat in on with us was mental capacity law. So I think it was very interesting because it's becoming more relevant with the new act coming in. So yeah, I think everyone learned a lot in that module. Yeah, I suppose in the class it was interesting to hear about the experience of the students with the intellectual disabilities, and to hear their thoughts on and concerns about the material that we were learning, and then I suppose we got to give our opinions as well then, so the class was quite interesting and made for a good discussion throughout the module. And my role in this project was that I was a peer support buddy for the students. So me and two other girls in the module, we met the students before the module, and then during the module we took it with us, and then after we were helping them with assignments and other coursework. I think the best thing about being a peer support buddy was to be able to build a relationship with the students and to see them really engage with the material we were learning, and then to hear their input on the material we were learning and the concerns that they had. So I think learning a lot from that as well was quite good. I think the hardest thing was trying to balance meeting the students and helping them with their assignments with my own college work, and then just more like even like trying to coordinate emails and times that would suit them and times that would suit us, because obviously everyone was very busy. So I think that was probably the most difficult thing.
Okay, so I think some interesting things that Mary brings up, the value of the different insights that the students from the ID Plus project bring, particularly to a module that's maybe discussing rights and decision making and capacity. So I think that's really interesting. And I think what we've seen with a lot of the feedback from the buddies is how having the opportunity to sit in a classroom and to work on a project with students from the ID Plus project has really helped them to become aware of the abilities and the strengths of people, and to maybe challenge that whole deficit-based understanding of other people. So the balancing with academic workload, that's something, again, we need to be careful of when we're talking to people in the training and making sure that people have a sense around boundaries and about how much work they have to do and what they shouldn't do. One or two other things that we learned from the peer buddies, the difficulty of organizing meetings online or in person, and particularly the online meetings because of students maybe from the project not having as many skills on the digital platforms. So that again is another piece of learning for us. Do we need to work that more into what we're doing? So we'll keep an eye on that one. And finally, the piece around knowing when to step in to help and knowing when to wait to be asked. That's a real skill. And again, something we probably need to work on a little bit more maybe in the training part, so that we get that balance right. Okay, so just to wrap up, for us, we're, as we've said, continuously reflecting on the year that's gone past, and thinking about how we might tweak things or change things. So our direction of travel, I suppose, some of the guiding principles for us. The first one is to stay student informed. And we began today with the students having center stage, because that is what this project is about. So it's really important to us that we continue to check in all the time with the students and stay informed by what it is they're enjoying and what it is they feel they want to develop more. We're going to try and expand the range of co-learning options. So there were 17 modules. I think this year we're going to try and expand that next year so that people have even more choice to pick topics that are more meaningful to them. So we'll continue to do that. We're also going to, I suppose, push the agenda around inclusive practice and the agenda around progression routes for people, or at least alternative routes that people can move on to. And to do that at program level by expanding our co-learning modules. To do it also, I think, at institutional level by encouraging more of our colleagues to think about what we as an institution need to do to be more inclusive. And then at the national level, you know, pushing to try and influence it with our colleagues in INHEV, the call that will come. And I know we have, I won't call anybody out, but we have colleagues here who will be involved in designing that call for Path 4. So we would be very much trying to, I suppose, share our opinions around what we think should be in that, and try and shape the call that will come to best advantage. Okay, I think that's about it for now. So before we wrap up, we have one more speaker, but any questions or comments on that section? People are probably getting tired now as lunch approaches. Nuala. Yeah. Can I ask you, Nicola, to...
Sorry. Just to give us a few more details about the training that the peer buddies receive. I think you made reference to it and they did too, but just to give us a sense of what that looks like.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. I'll ask Nicola to...
Okay, thank you, Nuala. Yes, so I'm keeping an eye here too. Is that okay? We met, I mean, the training. Oh yeah. Oh, see, sorry. I have to take them away. See that. So the training really consisted of a series of meetings, meeting buddies before things kicked off, people who, and giving people the opportunity even at the first meeting to really consider, do they want to continue with this once they started hearing about it? Because, you know, we did say, look, you've signed up. Maybe when you hear a little bit today, you might think this is not for me. I don't think anybody dropped out at all though. So we managed to keep people with us, and I don't know, Dara and Ruby might want to jump in at some point as well. We set up a series of drop-in meetings throughout the semester. Now, some of those meetings were well attended. In some meetings, there were only 1 or 2 people, because we very much emphasized they were opportunities for people to come and have a chat, really. And to do so very informally about the types of things that might arise. We did have one session, or actually, no, we had a session in both semesters where we introduced Easy Read in particular, that whole idea. We had a student I know in semester 1, I think it was in the sports module, I see Dermot sitting down at the back, who, you know, Easy Read was a light bulb moment for her, because she was working with a student who she felt was hanging back, and she thought, okay, if I can translate this into Easy Read, I can work with this person, and you know, we can move things on. So certainly we heard back from some of the buddies that this whole, and I know students in nursing already were very familiar with Easy Read, but other students weren't. So a lot of people became very versed in the skills for Easy Read, and then, you know, producing an Easy Read document, but not leaving it at that. Going back and sitting with the student and double checking it was actually Easy Read for the person they designed it for. So that element of learning to co-create things started creeping into that as well. And there were all sorts of discussions along the way about the things that were raised in the videos. You know, how do you keep somebody focused? How do you do that diplomatically without, you know, feeling you're being rude, without trampling on people's ideas? We probably, it's fair to say, you know, have more work to do in terms of how we formulate those sessions, because like I said earlier on, one of the idea of the peer buddies came quite late. We genuinely thought only about 10 people would sign up and then 57 did. So that in itself became another process of coordination. But I hope, does that answer your question? Thank you.
And one of the things to flag as well is that students who took part in as peer buddies were able to apply through the employee agility program that we have at UCC to have their contribution recognised and to get that validated by the award. So that happened as well for some students. Okay, anything else? Comments? Questions? No.
Can I just put in a few online comments? So Elaine Aylward, I'm not sure where Elaine is from, just wanted to say that she was finding this really informative and interesting. Is particularly liked hearing about the lived experience of students and practitioners. I found that helpful. Eileen O'Callaghan again wanted to input her thanks to everybody here. And again, Margaret, who I think is from MTU. So just to acknowledge those people online putting in comments.
Okay, so I think we'll finish up maybe with inviting our colleague. Oh, sorry, Reid is going to do that.
To close our showcase, I would like to welcome Professor Nuala Finnegan, Dean of Undergraduate and Postgraduate Studies, to deliver the closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Reid. Thank you. And thank you everybody for being here. And I hate the word inspiring. It's a word that is much overused to be almost meaningless. So I think I would use maybe the word powerful to describe what we've been hearing today, but also I think the impact of things like the Rebels Manifesto, which I first had the privilege of hearing by another presentation with Brian and William in November in this same room. And when it caused this kind of ripple effect across the room, when we realized that we were really witnessing something that went to the very heart of who we are and what we stand for. And the kind of characteristics that they isolate there, you know, the importance of freedom, the importance of equality of opportunity, agency over decision making, respect, the need to be safe. And as Dean of Undergraduate and Postgraduate Studies, and I work very closely with the registrar, who has been immensely supportive of this project, and all of us in that office work very hard towards supporting and championing this project across the university. But there can be no other set of characteristics that better articulate what all of our programs across the university should stand for, and what all of the people involved in those, whether learners, co-learners, teachers, validators, accreditors, should aspire towards providing. So we are so pleased to be here today. We've learned so much from this showcase, I think. The lived experience of the students, first and foremost, the challenges of the design and the challenges faced by the team. The team effort across the university is extraordinary, not just the people involved at the very coalface, but all of those peer buddies and the teaching fellows that have joined to make it such a success. So I think these are the lessons I think that we can all take away. There are, of course, many future challenges, not least of which are, you know, the sustainability of projects like this, the removal of the kind of structural blockages that face everybody in the sector, you know, when it comes to funding of the programs, supports for the students, and we have to continue to strive for ways of around those blockages and to make sure that programs like this can have a future and can become absolutely embedded as core of what all education institutions, both at further and higher levels, should be striving to do. So, I mean, finally, I want to thank a few people, obviously, the students, Claire, Reid, William, Brian, but also the other students that were also on the video are not here. I think Kaylee, Alan, Natasha, and others. So there were other people also who contributed today. We want to thank our colleagues from the HEA, and we're delighted to welcome colleagues from there today to be with us. And obviously to acknowledge the importance of the upcoming call for funding, phase 2 of Path 4, and we look forward to seeing what possibilities are generated by that particular call. We thank everybody for participating, and particularly people who've travelled, and we're aware that people have travelled from many other institutions across the country, and that's really important in terms of building momentum and sharing experience and trying to build capacity across the sector. And so I want to, and if we can build that capacity by harnessing some of the joy and the enthusiasm and the creativity that we've seen today, I think we'll be in a very good place. And I just want to finish by thanking 3 really key people, because, you know, we have mentioned, you know, the large infrastructure that is required, but there are three amazing women at the heart of this project. Nicola over here, Mary, who I'm sure is hiding somewhere, but is also in the room, and who is project manager. And of course, Professor Maureen, who has really been at the forefront of this agenda for a very long time in UCC. And I really want to pay tribute to her, as she's a really important voice for progressive change in our institution. And I want to acknowledge that here today. So thank you to everybody, and hopefully we'll meet again soon.
So thank you. That concludes proceedings for today. And to let you know, lunch will be along very shortly. And thank you all for your time and attention. Thank you.